Well, a very good afternoon to you all on this first day of the extension to our lockdown in South Africa. I'm Mark Long, rector of the parish of St Andrew in Newlands, Cape Town. The Eucharist readings today reflect again on the importance of the Eastertide theme of encounter. We have Peter and John in Acts chapter 4 being called to account to the Jewish leadership for what God has done through them in the healing of the lame man. What gives them the courage to speak as confidently as they do? It's an important question, and I think it relates to their encounter with the risen Christ. In the reading from John today, we find them fishing, the disciples fishing, Jesus waiting for them on the beach, and sharing bread and fish with them. And we're told that this is the third time that he appeared to them. Twice in the upper room in which they were sitting fearful, and now on the beach on the Sea of Galilee. The Acts reading shows the impact of these encounters. And we find both in Peter and John in the Acts story and obviously happening amongst the other disciples, a shift from the place of deep fear of the authorities, fear of what may happen, to the courage to actually stand up and be visible and to acclaim the resurrection of Christ and the power by which the things around them are happening. And so I think partly for me, the question right at this point in our lives comes down to what encounters have we had, and what has been the impact of our encounters with God on who we are, what we do, and the way we operate. It's an important question. For me, I think back to my teenage years, where caught up in the whole time of deep revival of the Spirit in those years, where speaking in tongues and prophesying and all sorts of other things were deeply important to us. Sadly for me, I think that for many of us, they became an ends in themselves. And we sought those experiences just for the kind of spiritual high that they would put us on. But it strikes me, particularly when we interact a little bit with Paul as he's talking to the Corinthians in 1 Corinthians 13, he comes to the point of saying, we really need to search out the greater gifts, which he lists as faith, hope, and love. And it just strikes me that actually the gifts that we receive in our moments of deep personal encounter with Christ, with the Spirit of God, they're given not for themselves, but they're given to give us the kind of courage and the strength and the vision that we see operating in Peter and in John in the Acts reading today. And so perhaps important at this particular time, as our world continues to grapple with the coronavirus, as we continue to really ask questions around how our faith impacts in a world that's in this kind of crisis. Important for us to, as we have this time in lockdown, to really reflect on our own experiences with God, with the Spirit of God. The encounters we've had and what those have been, and what gifts God has given us, and to see that those gifts are something that we're able to share as we move into these next 2 weeks and beyond, importantly. The gifts of faith, hope, and love, I think, are deeply critical to not just people of faith at this time, but for the world in which we live. And as lockdown is slowly lifted for many throughout the world, how do we live out our lives in a way that really makes our faith meaningful, that it provides a deep source of hope to our world, and that it's visible in a depth of love that we share?